Hi, I'm Fred Kowal, President of United University Professions, the union that represents the faculty and staff at SUNY. I'd like to thank Gwen Kay and the entire membership of the SUNY University Faculty Senate for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. Now, as I record this, I'm hopeful that I will be present tomorrow to deliver these words and thoughts to you in person, but it all depends on the weather. I live in Schoharie County, up a mountain road that is, well, it's gravel, and it's not always the first road to be plowed, and so it really depends on how much snow we get tonight and tomorrow morning. But I certainly hope to see you in person. If not, I'm taking advantage of technology to present to you some information on issues that I believe are of great interest to all of us involved in the important work that SUNY does. First, as so many of you, I'm sure, are concerned about, you'd like to know how we stand in terms of implementing the UUP State of New York Collective Bargaining Agreement, our contract. As you know, we're into the fourth year of our collectively bargained agreement with the State of New York. As part of this agreement, there is a number of features that are complex, challenging for both us and SUNY in terms of implementing, but really important to major sections within our union and constituent groups within our union. To begin with, last fall saw the first increase mandated by the contract in the established new minimum for adjunct per course pay. That was historic. We've never gotten that into a contract before. Certainly the salary minima are nowhere near they need to be, but to establish them and establish the principle that there must be minimum salaries or per course salaries. And the fact is they will be rising over the next couple of years, and certainly the next round of negotiations will include demands to raise those minimum. Nonetheless, there are campuses within SUNY where adjuncts are seeing an increase, and that's good news. Second, at the hospitals, at the SUNY hospitals, holiday pay has now been established for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. There's also been an increase in on-call pay. That went into effect last July. At Upstate, there was an increase, and even a larger increase at Downstate and out at Stony Brook. This also impacts some of the members of UUP's bargaining unit if you are required as part of your job to be in an on-call setting. Raises have kicked in as well. The next round of 2% raises went into effect in July or September of last year, and we're going to get more, obviously, with this year. More importantly, though, perhaps, was the implementation of both the discretionary salary increases and then the first money in our union's history to come to those of us whose salaries have been compressed over the years of our service in SUNY. Now, nothing like this had ever been attempted on the scale that it's being attempted right now. There have been efforts at campuses within SUNY, there have been efforts at other universities to address salary compression or salary inversion, but not to this scale. And really starting last January, there were meetings between the leadership of UUP, the leadership of SUNY, and the Governor's Office of Employee Relations to work out the framework for the analysis of our salaries and the determination of the scale of compression where it was occurring, and then how much money would be allocated to those individuals who were found to be compressed. The negotiations were not easy. The work in developing the framework was also very challenging. But at the end of the process, late last fall, we did come to an agreement that we believe is the start of something very historic. We have established with SUNY and with the Governor's Office the principle that for many of us, our salaries have not kept pace with where they need to be, given what's happened in the market for salaries across higher education. In this first go-around, campuses were given total control of the analysis based on the framework we negotiated, and that process was done by human resources offices across the SUNY campuses where our represented members work. That analysis has been done just about everywhere, and funding has been distributed to individuals who were found to be compressed and fall within the framework as established, as I said, statewide and at the campus level. We are right now receiving reports from campuses as to what took place. That's mandated by our agreement. We are examining these reports. We're looking to see if there are any flaws in the analysis that was done or any unforeseen problems. We're looking at areas that stand out as unusual. We're looking to see if errors were made. We're depending on our members and our chapter leaders at every campus where we have represented UUPers to come to us with any information where there is an indication that perhaps problems occurred with the analysis or the distribution of funds. Now, the way we are insisting, and we really don't have any choice on this, this is what was negotiated with SUNY and with GOER, and this was insisted upon by SUNY. Human resource departments handle the analysis, and therefore any individual member of our bargaining unit who feels that she or he were discriminated against or didn't get the funding that they thought they should have to go to the HR departments on campuses and ask for an explanation. That was the agreed upon first step. But UUP has established a process, an intake form, so that individuals who feel that the system didn't work out right for them or they've got a question about it can fill out this form, submit it to their chapter office. We at the headquarters of UUP will work with our partners at every chapter and with every member who has a concern or a question or a dispute. The intention is to make sure everyone gets their fair share. But the other important part of this is to ensure that going forward, any problems that arise are dealt with. This is a 4-year program. It's literally, I'm seeing it as a marathon. There's no break. It's not like we drop everything, wait till next fall, and then see what happens. We are going to work continuously in analyzing what has happened in this first round to set up for the next round. And we will continue to work through the length of this contract to make sure every penny goes to where it's needed. The reality is, the funds that are committed to this will just scratch the surface of the compression problem as it exists in SUNY. It's our obligation together to not only make sure everyone gets the money they deserve, but together advocate for more funding for the university that we all serve, because short funding SUNY, in the end, affects the learning environment for our students and the work environment for each and every one of us. Speaking of funding for the university, UUP, as always, is aggressively advocating, and we have been. In essence, last year's session never ended for us. The budget was flat, and the decisions that I came to at that point was that UUP needed to step up its efforts as never before. We were pretty much the only group advocating through the summer into the fall. Basically, what we decided to do is to make sure that legislators knew our issues and literally we were in their faces starting last May all the way through to the present time. We wanted to make sure that the TAP gap, funding for the hospital, specifically the subsidy, transparency for the campus foundations, and funding to address long-standing issues within SUNY were addressed. That really 10 years is a decade long enough for flat funding in SUNY. That the situation must change. We have campuses that are hurting for a variety of reasons. The support by the state is absolutely necessary, and I believe strongly that 2020 is a year when this has to turn. I realize we all know what is being talked about in terms of the challenges facing the state of New York in terms of the budget gap that exists. The reality is, though, regardless of this situation, the challenge we all have in the legislature, in the governor's office, all of us in SUNY involved in faculty governance or in UUP, what is imperative is that we work together and come up with new ideas to solve the longstanding problems within SUNY. That is why, back last summer, as part of the efforts of advocacy, I challenged myself I challenge my fellow officers. I challenge the staff we have to literally create for SUNY a vision for its future role as leading to change in the state of New York, such that New York once again became the progressive leader in the country. Now, we heard a lot from the governor in his State of the State about how progressive a state we are. Where the state is not keeping pace is in funding in public higher education, because SUNY and CUNY are the people's universities. They belong to all of us. But for too long, the state, acting as the representatives of the people, have really discarded the university and basically depended on students to fund the education system. That's a situation that is untenable. But more than that, it does not reflect positively on the history of this state, the people of this state, and most of all, the leaders of this state. And so, on the UUPinfo.org website, you can see information about UUP's NY25 program. It is aspirational. It is filled with visionary ideas as in terms of where SUNY could go, should it choose to. And I'm challenging the leadership of SUNY. I'm challenging the governor. I'm challenging the legislature to look carefully at these ideas and perhaps use them as a starting point for dialogue, for brainstorming on issues of the climate crisis, of funding for public higher education, of medical education and medical care, of opportunity for all. I think it's imperative that SUNY become the people's university in fact, by making it a university that everyone in New York State can be a part of. That's why, as part of NY25, on a space available basis, I believe that anyone over the age of 16 should be able to take a free course at SUNY, if seats are available in a course, every couple of years. It's their university. It's our university. Let's make that a possibility. Let's make it a priority. Because if everyone has an opportunity to take advantage of a SUNY education, then there will be a commitment to the university by the people of New York and a willingness to pay for the expenses of having a first-rate university system. But I encourage you to go to the website to look at what we're proposing in making SUNY the lead institution in addressing the climate crisis, in addressing the challenges we face in finding funding sources for our university, in making sure that medical education addresses not only the shortages that are occurring right now in the professions involved in medical care, but even more disturbing, the lack of diversity, both in medical schools and in the healthcare providers across this state and nation. Just this morning, I read the summary of a report from the American Medical Association about the lack of diversity in both medical care and in medical schools, and how the situation grows worse daily. This is getting at the root of what I believe to be a major challenge for all of us, and it's linked to what I was just talking about with NY25. You know, I think that the governor should be applauded for so much of what he said in the State of the State regarding the hateful attacks that are anti-Semitic, have nothing to do with what America is supposed to be. Unfortunately, our history is marked by racism, by genocide against Native Americans and slavery of African Americans, discrimination towards all people of color, to those with their defining their own sexual identity and sexual preferences. America strives to be better, and we are called to be much better than what we have seen in the anti-Semitic attacks that have taken place in New York and elsewhere, and also the racism that has reared its ugly head more and more over this past decade, and unfortunately finds voice in the leadership of our nation's government. And the governor is to be applauded for speaking so strongly about the need for us to come together and not be divided. But here's the challenge. Words are important, but deeds are much more important. As I read the articles about the lack of diversity in medical schools and in the healthcare industry, as I considered the report that came out last year, in an article that was in The Atlantic, that talked about the fact that the United States has one of the worst records among developed nations when it comes to maternal mortality. And the reason why our numbers grow worse is because the numbers are horribly high for African American women, especially. The reality is that for African American women, regardless of education level or income level, the danger they face in giving birth is higher, 4 times as high as it is for women who are white. Taking it further, an African American woman who has graduate education and advanced degree has a greater chance of losing her child at birth than a white woman with an 8th grade education. The studies that are showing that the treatment that African Americans receive in our medical care system in the United States, it's just horrible. There's no other way to put it. The system must change. Racism must be addressed directly when institutions are created and maintained that feed this crime against humanity. I can think of no better way to address the reality of racism as we see it in these kind of statistics and these kind of lost lives than for the state of New York to invest in its SUNY hospitals, its 4 academic medical centers, such that quality medical education is affordable and accessible to a more diverse population. And let's make sure that the hospitals that SUNY has as teaching and caring and research institutions grow and flourish. We need a commitment for the foreseeable future that the SUNY hospitals will continue and will grow. I don't see a commitment from the state. I don't see strong enough advocacy from SUNY on behalf of these hospitals. I laid down this challenge in this year for the short run. Let us make sure that SUNY's hospitals receive the subsidy they must have. But secondly, let's make sure that resources are committed to the academic medical centers so that we can start turning around the twin scourges of maternal mortality and infant mortality as it affects communities of color. It's in our power to do this. These are deeds, not words. And the deeds are necessary if we are to eliminate racism and the impacts that it has on lives and on our society. Hopefully, we who make up literally the biggest higher education union in the country, those of us in UUP, and all of us who are engaged in the important work, the vocation of education, research, and healing at SUNY and CUNY and all of its constituent parts. Hopefully together, we can show the way for our state to a better future, a more humane, just, and sustainable future. And then we will light the way for the rest of our nation, which is so divided right now. Once again, thanks to you, Gwen Kay, for your leadership and for asking me to be a part of your gathering. And to all of you, my colleagues, I wish you the best for a successful gathering, safe travels going home, and a good spring semester. Thanks.